Hey, what's up, you guys? It's Tommy from Saleslucky.com here. Today we're going to be talking about qualifying and needs development, okay? This is by far the most important part of the sales process. If you get this part done well, if you get this part down well, which means you're qualifying if it's the right opportunity, you're building up pain, you're relieving their pain and getting them to connect with their vision of what's possible, really connecting them with the pain of not changing their situation and the pleasure of changing the situation. If you guys get this part down well, the rest of the sales process is a heck of a lot easier, okay? So again, to highlight this particular step in the sales process, we're talking about qualifying, which is understanding if this is a true opportunity at this point in time, and needs development, which is identifying their pain points and then expanding those pain points, amplifying that pain until it's unbearable for them to change, okay? That might sound almost mean in a sense, but it's not. It's actually the right thing to do, because if they have a problem that they may or may not realize and you ask them questions to allow them to see what would happen if they don't change, you're actually getting them to be more aware. And so getting them to connect with that pain is super important in being able to get somebody to change, okay? And as salespeople, a lot of times that's what our job is to do, is to get people to change. And if there wasn't any salespeople in the world, nothing would get done, nothing would happen. So the other thing is connecting their vision of what's possible, what they want most in life with your product or service, and how your product or service would help them get to where they want to go. That's the second piece of it. It's incredibly important getting them to own the vision and buy into the pleasure of their vision of what would be possible for them, of what they want and need the most in their lives, their deepest desires. If you can connect your product and service to that, that's going to be very, very key. And of course, as well as this step in the process, as you are guiding them through their pain, seeing the implications of that, and getting them to then get them to see the light a little bit, see what's possible, see what's available for them if they do change, and how they can solve their problems. As you're doing that, you're making sure to get them to buy into each step along the way, okay? So couple key points for this video. You want to understand the power of questions. I've mentioned in some of the other videos that questions are some of the most powerful tools you have as a salesperson, and in fact, a great salesperson asks great questions, contrary to what Hollywood movies like to show. It's the skill of asking questions that's incredibly important, and the reason is because by asking questions, you get to direct the conversation, you get to guide the conversation. When you say things like, interesting, Mr. Bob, or Mr. Customer, I'm curious, how does that work? How does that impact things when you do it this way and not that way? Where did those problems come from? Why are those things important to you? You direct and guide the conversation where you want it to go, and you elicit responses from your prospects. And if the answers are coming from them, it's going to mean a whole lot more than if the responses were coming from you, because what comes from you, they can disagree with. What comes out of them, they're not going to disagree with, okay? So other than controlling the conversation, guiding the prospect and being incredibly powerful in that sense, and helping them to elicit their responses, and getting their answers of what they think is right for them, or what their perspective is and what they think is right. Another thing to keep in mind here that's incredibly important for this part of the sales, this part of the sales process, as far as mindset goes, is keeping a natural curiosity, okay? So questions and natural curiosity, they go hand in hand. And by natural curiosity, all I mean is, you picture in your mind, if you can imagine like a 3-year-old toddler talking to their mom, and the mom's like, "Hey Tyler, you need to eat your veggies," and Tyler's like, "Why?" And she's like, "Well, it's healthy for you." Well, and he's like, "Why? Well, why?" Like, I don't mean to be annoying, but like, I think we all have a degree of natural curiosity in us, and I'm not asking you to be annoying by any means, but what I'm saying is, when you have a genuine curiosity come up of why something is, or why is it that way, and why does it work in this way and not that, to ask those questions to your prospect, because I mean, we all understand in everyday life, when we do that in a crowd of people or group of people, most likely there's a bunch of other people with the same question. But aside from that, the reason why this is beneficial in a sales environment is because you want to understand where your prospect is coming from. And just by having a genuine curiosity, that makes the conversation flow smoother, because it's natural. You're having a genuine conversation, and then when natural curiosity comes up, you can ask your questions, and that will help them, um, again, uncover those pain points, get them to see what's possible, understand why they're doing things, so you can help them change that. Okay. And understand what's the real reason behind what they're saying, behind their words. And by being naturally curious, you can elicit those things so you can handle them, or teach them a new way, or get them to buy into a new vision of what's possible for themselves. So keeping that natural curiosity is super important. And when I was learning from one of my uh, first sales mentors, my previous VP, um, selling procurement research, when we would hop off calls and we would dissect our calls, a lot of times he would stop and ask me, like, what do you think you should have asked in this instance? And 90+% of the time, that what I should have asked was just why, just a simple word, why. And that's why I mentioned that picture of that image of that little kid, right? I'm always asking why. They're curious about how the world works. And you want to be like that as well. You want to be curious about how your prospects work, what they think, what they believe, what they value, what they desire. Only by asking questions can you elicit those responses, okay? So, by asking questions like that, you can understand what your prospects and clients genuinely care about, maybe even beneath the words that they're telling you. And, those things are the ultimate drivers in our decision making, which is emotional, as you guys know. So we're driven by emotions, and by asking great questions, you can elicit the real drivers that are underneath for your prospects. Okay. The other piece I wanted to mention was listening skills and presence. So what I mean by that is, oftentimes, especially in movies, salespeople are portrayed as this loud, gregarious, um, just like boastful kind of, um, high pressure, suave kind of character, right? And the truth is, 90% of that is not true. It's actually the opposite of what's portrayed in movies. What a surprise, right? Um, a great salesperson, one of the qualities of a great salesperson is being able to listen. And there's a couple reasons for this. One, when you pay attention and listen to the customer, that induces reciprocity later for them to listen to you and what you have to say in the solution that you're providing them. It's a two-way street. Get it? Um, you listen to them, you pay attention to them and their problems that they're telling you about. And once they finish, they listen to you with your solutions that you're going to provide them. Second thing is, listening just creates value. It creates value. Um, you know, People want to be heard. People want to talk about themselves and their problems and what they're struggling with. And if you can really give them your undivided attention, that's going to go a long way. That's going to separate you from the pack, the majority of the rest of the salespeople out there that don't listen. Okay, so that's going to set you apart from the get-go right there. And then the other aspect is that you're able to really pay attention. You're really able to pick up the nuances in their communication. Sometimes it's in the tonality. Sometimes it's, if you're face to face, the facial expressions. Sometimes it's the drop in the tone of voice, or pause in a tone of voice in a certain way, or you're able to pick up the nuances, especially in a professional setting where people are not as candid or is not as vulnerable, if you could say, to what the real problems are. You'll be able to pick up little nuances that you wouldn't have noticed. And then by doing that, you can then ask better questions because you've picked up certain pieces of information in the tone or in the way they said things. And then you can follow up that with a better question, because if you're present, if you're listening, you can respond very effectively to what's being brought in front of you, as opposed to rigidly following a script. Any of you guys who've done sales in the past, who've tried to do an entire sale based off a script, you know how robotic and unnatural that feels, and ineffective that is. One of my inspirations for this idea of listening and presence actually comes from one of my heroes, who's Bruce Lee. So, as I'm sure you guys know, Bruce Lee was this martial artist, arguably the greatest martial artist of all time, who was just the father, basically, of mixed martial arts, way before the MMA was popular. But what Bruce believed was, he ended up, he studied Wing Chun, which is like an ancient form of Chinese Kung Fu, for years. And there was a point of time later in his career where he started shedding that and learning and forming his own style of Kung Fu. His own style of Kung Fu was called Jeet Kune Do. Basically, to summarize this story, he created a style of Kung Fu as he deemed style with no style, or form with no form. Basically, what this means is that he believed in Kung Fu that was not rigid to a particular style, but one that was free-flowing, where you can respond most effectively to the situation and the moment at hand. So it's not like in boxing, where there's a jab and a hook and then a couple of the punches, and those are the only things you can do. His concept was, you can do anything and whatever makes sense for that particular moment. Okay, you're not restricted to a certain style, but your movements are free to move in whatever style is suitable for that moment. Basically, the forefather of mixed martial arts. As I was learning sales, I started thinking how true that is in a sales environment as well, where oftentimes we are provided with a long script, which, God forbid, we know doesn't work, because conversations don't flow like that. Conversations flow naturally. And while you might have a script, the prospect might ask a question or bring up a topic that is completely off script, which for most sales conversations that are of, when you're selling anything over like $20 or $50, it's going to be that case, okay? I'm just throwing those numbers out there, but you get what I mean. Especially for a complex sell, there's no way you're going to be able to do that with a script. So you have to be able to adapt to the moment. You have to be fluid. You have to be flexible. And that's why I believe it's important to be present in the conversation, to understand exactly what's happening, to be here in this here and now in this moment right here, so you can respond naturally and you can respond effectively to what the prospect is bringing you. So we have questions, the power of questions, being naturally curious, having great listening skills and presence. And then the fourth point is just value creation. As you're listening, as you're asking great questions, where you're uncovering pain points, whether you're amplifying that pain, getting them to see the causes of what would happen if they don't change, and asking them questions about what would be possible, what they could see happening if they did change and they did sign up for your product or service, or if they did make a change in their life, what would their lives look like 5, 10, 15 years from now? Getting them to associate emotionally with the pain, and then taking them out of the pain into the pleasure, and listening to them and asking great questions, that all creates value for somebody, okay? Getting somebody to see the impacts of their pain and own the possibilities of their vision. So this is a quick video just highlighting some of the most important mindset aspects of qualifying and needs development, which is by far the most important step in the entire sales process, way more than closing. In fact, this part of the sale is probably a good 2/3 of the entire sales process right here, okay? So, you know, study this part, guys. Listen to this part, implement it, and would love to hear what you guys think. Feel free to drop a comment in the article below.